I finally mastered how to set those financial boundaries with family. I now only do it when I want to and when I have the financial means to. And that means that sometimes people aren't happy because they expect you to bow down as a daughter or as a niece or as a granddaughter and open your checkbook. But I've had to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Hey, journeyers. Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast. Today I have on the guest seat Gigi Gonzalez. She is a financial educator, influencer, speaker, founder of the First Gen Mentor, and the author of the upcoming book, Cultura Cash. During the Great Resignation, she quit her 10-year corporate career in financial services to pursue her true passion, teaching financial literacy to young adults. She's been featured in dozens of publications, including the New York Times, Business Insider, and more. Lives in Chicago. We're going to learn more about Gigi's rise to fame in the personal finance space right now. So welcome to the podcast, Gigi.
Oh, Jamila, you're so sweet. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so excited to get to talk to you because I really feel I love the way you speak about money, but I also just love the way you share your life. I'm not as much on TikTok, even though I know that's where all the young hip people are like yourself. But from your Instagram account, I just love how you share your journey. So not only like the personal finance tips themselves, which are always great, but also like personally, like evolving into an entrepreneur. And you share like tidbits of your life that I think really impact your financial journey and entrepreneurial journey, which I think people relate to a lot. So I want to get into all that and learn more about you. So again, just welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So Gigi, so one of the things that you said, or I just said in the bio, was you quit your 10-year corporate career during the Great Resignation. So let's talk about what that Great Resignation was, and then what led you to quit your job. And then I want to go back a bit about your career path and trajectory.
Sure, let's talk about it.
So for you, like what made you decide to quit your job of 10 years, that stability and that income to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't an easy decision. I think a lot of people romanticize the opportunity to quit your 9 to 5, to be a boss babe and work for yourself, make your own schedule. But that was never an ambition of mine ever. I never had any goals to be an entrepreneur. I very much am an accidental entrepreneur. And the way that all went down is up until recently, had a pretty traditional life, living, a 9 to 5 job, corporate job with benefits, had my retirement age planned out. That was very much my life. But I started posting TikTok content in March of 2021. My account went viral a month later. It was bizarre how it all went down. And with my account blowing up, I started receiving a lot of opportunities. And it was cool because I'm like, oh, somebody wants to pay me $300 to go teach a financial literacy workshop. I was already doing this kind of work for free in my community as a volunteer financial educator for a nonprofit. So I'm like, oh, somebody's actually want to pay me $300? Like, cool. Like a nice little side hustle, right? So the thing is, the kind of job that I had was in investment management. And for anybody that doesn't know the field, it's just an extremely regulated industry, which means that if I was to accept any paid work outside of my 9 to 5, I had to have written approval from my employer. So I submitted the request, not thinking it would be, no thing. And right away, it was denied. They said, nope, this is illegal and a reputational risk. We cannot approve this request. And that was disheartening because I'm like, I think this is good community work to spread financial literacy to others. And at first I was just like, okay, well, I guess this is the end of this road. That was fun, even though it never started. And I'm so thankful that I had friends and family that were like, hold on, what are you doing? Like, there's an opportunity here. It wasn't me. I was ready to just like keep doing my 9 to 5 as I was. But I am so thankful that I had friends and family that encouraged me to at least think about it. And their reasoning was like, this is your passion. You've been doing this for 2 years pro bono. Now there's an opportunity to be paid to be a financial educator. And the reason that I knew I would have the ability to do that was because they knew I had savings. Because all my friends and family knew that I was saving aggressively to quit my job in the future for a round the world trip. I had this big dream of traveling the world for a year and then resuming my corporate career. So I was squirreling away money. So they're like, don't you have like that big pot of money that you can kind of use while you explore this? And I'm like, no, that's for my dreams. That's not for like entrepreneurship. What is this? So, at first I was super against it. And then I warmed up to the idea and I resigned a month later. And here I am today, a little over 2 years later.
Right. Well, this is like that is the epitome of stay ready because you just never know. Stay ready so you don't have to
Exactly.
get ready. And what I love talking about in terms of the financial journey or the life journey, it's, they're one and the same because you just never know. You might think you're doing something for one reason
Mm-hmm.
and you have this money set aside for this, but then it really helps you do something completely different that you can't even foresee. Like you can't
Yeah,
even know from this place you're standing how it will help you in the future. So I want to go back a bit because you said while
sure.
you were working in your corporate career, you were teaching and volunteering, teaching about finances. So let's go back a little further in your past a
Sure.
bit because what was your upbringing like? And how did money come into play in that? And then when did you get conscious of being that you needed to be good with money or at least a good steward of money?
Yeah, great question. So, my background, I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants. I'm a first generation American. I grew up in a small agricultural border town in California, in Southern California. When I tell people I'm from SoCal, they're like, oh, LA? I'm like, no. So it's like 2 hours east of San Diego. It's a very, very small agricultural town. So, growing up, we in an immigrant household, we certainly did not have regular money conversations. Really, the only thing I heard about money growing up was there isn't enough of it, so don't bother asking us for any. So what that looked like was when the Scholastic Book Fair came to our school and I wanted a little money to buy a book, the answer was always no. If we had a field trip with our classroom, I got like $5 for the field trip. The same thing, like $5 to get me all the week for my school lunches. So I always kind of was told like, no, you do not ask for more money because we don't have it. And growing up, it was very common to see my family go through, financial emergencies, but tap into extended family or friends for loans. That was very normal. Oh, we have this financial hiccup. We're going to hit up so and so. And vice versa. And then my parents would be the ones to loan money and back and forth. So that was very much my experience in my immigrant household.
And that's very relatable. So for so many of us, first gen immigrants and that community, of people having to come together, when you don't have a lot of
Right.
resources, you have to make the most of what you have. And a lot of the resources that we do have, while it may not be money as immigrants, is family or connections if you're lucky enough to find or have a community where you land. With that now, as you grow up, so you're now going to high school, college, what did you think you wanted to do? What was your goal and how did you end up in your career?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't sure. My immigrant parents always instilled in me that I had to go to college to have a better life than they did, but they couldn't offer any guidance beyond that because they had never been to college themselves. So the goal was always to go to college and graduate, but there wasn't a clear picture of what that looked like. So career wise, I lacked that guidance, but I always knew that I was good with math. I liked math. Math was easy to me, and I liked something about the notion of working with money. I didn't know in what capacity. I thought I wanted to be a financial planner. Then I interned with somebody, and I'm like, no, this isn't for me. Um, but I kept getting like images of a bank, of me working at a bank. Again, I didn't know in what capacity. But my very first job straight out of college was doing auto insurance claims for Progressive Insurance. So still handling money in some way, right? Paying people for their auto claim after a car accident. That job was I have some interesting stories from that job because if you think about it, people aren't like their most happiest after a car accident.
Mm.
So they're just really difficult to work with. And they're screaming at you like you're the one that ran into the back of their car when you're just trying to pay the settlement claim. And then, after that, I finally switched to industries because I just didn't feel professionally fulfilled. I had an econ degree for my bachelor's, and I'm like, this doesn't feel like I'm putting my econ degree to use. So I switched to investment consulting. I did that for a little bit. And then I most recently was in investment management, where I specialize in investment performance reporting.
And during that time, what were your personal finances like? I often hear people say, they're good with math, they have a great maybe career with dealing with money, but it doesn't always translate into their personal finances. So, what did that look like for you navigating your personal finances and your career at that time?
Not great. And I say not great because I had a lot of challenges as a young adult in my 20s. Even though I was making more money than my immigrant parents ever had, I was still struggling with money. And that was really frustrating to me because I'm like, hold on, I did everything quote unquote right. I went to college. I got like a recession proof degree. I have a stable corporate job. Why am I still struggling with money? And yeah, I learned it's because I didn't know how to manage it. I had never been
Mm,
taught how to manage it. And, obviously they don't teach this stuff in school either. So what that looked like was, having financial emergencies of my own, like having bad bosses, bad work situations, toxic relationships, nightmare roommate situations that I couldn't get out of because I didn't have enough money to escape these spaces. So yeah, my 20s were rough. It was a roller coaster.
So, how did you turn it around? What was the point in which you did
The
something
moment
different? Mm,
Yeah. I think in my late 20s, I just I hit this point of just like, why is it so hard? And I recognize, oh, it's because I never was taught money. So then at this point, I'm like, okay, I can't keep making this excuse of like, well, I don't know how money
mm,
works, so I'm just gonna suck for the rest of my life. And I decided to self-teach myself how money works. So I think I did it like most people do by just kind of reading a bunch of money books, all the money books that I could get a hold of. And then once I learned what I learned, that's when I'm like, this is unfair that like some people get taught this at home and some people don't. And the people that don't get screwed over. So that's why I felt the need to like pour back to my community. I lived in Phoenix at the time and I Googled how can I spread financial literacy to others. And I came across a nonprofit where I could be a pro bono educator.
What did you do? Like, so you said you started to realize and learn management skills for your money. So, what were the things that you started to do to turn your money around? And what was your situation? Were you in a lot of debt? Did you have a spending like problem? What was your financial kind of snapshot at that point?
Yeah. Yeah. So after learning about money management through reading over 50 personal finance books, I learned like the power of goal setting and, of coming up with your why, right? Because that's what's going to drive you to keep going and making that financial progress. And for me, that's when I had this big dream of traveling the world for a year while I was
Mm,
young. I didn't want to have to wait until a maybe date in the future that may not come, right? So many people don't make it. You just don't know. Especially with the pandemic, we just saw how things can change very quickly. So that was very much my purpose and what kept me motivated. And I sat down with my money and I said, all right, how are we going to make this happen? I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but I want to take a year off work. Like that's a big goal. So I put all my ducks in a row and I saw, okay, I have some debt. I've been pretty passive with my debt this whole time. I had student loans, about $35,000 in student loans. I had a car note. I had some credit card debt. I was making minimum payments because that's what I thought you had to do. As long as the bill was paid on time, you were being responsible. I didn't realize you were supposed to be more proactive with your debt. I had no savings, which is why I kept finding myself in these bad situations that I couldn't get out of. I had no savings to get me out. So once I kind of saw what my income was and how my income, I was working at the time in San Diego with a very high cost of living. I saw I'm not going to be able to make the progress that I want to make soon with my low pay. I mean, at the time, I think I was making $60,000, and the high cost of living in San Diego. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to keep running in place. So I talked to my then boyfriend, and I said, "What do you think about moving somewhere more affordable?" And luckily, he was on board. So we left. We left San Diego in 2019, sunny San Diego, which a lot of people, they will happily stay in debt. And I know I have a lot of friends that will do that because they just love San Diego. And for me, I'm like, I need to get myself in a better
mm.
financial foundation. So I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, not too far. I was still driving distance to my family and friends, but that helped tremendously because the cost of living at the time in Phoenix was much more affordable than it was in San Diego. And I also got a nice pay bump with my new job in Phoenix. So having the additional income, having the lower cost of living really helped me make progress towards building savings and paying off that debt.
I love that you shared that. Now, with this new job that you took on, just because this is an idea or concept that we talk a lot in, in personal finance as advice for people, like move from high cost of living to low cost of living. And of
Right.
course, there are hurdles with that. Like you said, like I'd be probably one of those people, maybe it depends on how bad my situation was, that I really care about the where. Like I really care about where I live, especially if I'm close to family and friends. So it'd be harder for me to relocate, but for some people, it's not as hard, right? And so with that, how did you plan for that? So it seems like you went to a whole different company. And is that true? Or did you stay with the company? And what was that like? Was it looking at apartments at the same time and then also looking for job opportunities? I want to get a little bit into the details of that for people who are now
Sure.
considering like how they could start thinking about a move like that.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, anybody that's considering it, honestly, it's one of the best financial moves I made. No pun intended, like moving from San Diego to Phoenix, because I would not be where I'm at had I not made that big change. And I would like to acknowledge it's not possible for everybody to move because you have family commitments, legal things going on. But if you are more flexible and you have the ability to move, I would encourage anybody to look into it. And it doesn't have to be forever. I was only in Phoenix for 2.5 years. I probably could have left after a year and a half, but it was a pandemic, so we stayed a little longer. And look at me now. I'm in Chicago, and I love Chicago. And Phoenix was rough, because just I wasn't surrounded by like-minded people. This is very, think about the time. It was 2020, 2021. Like Trump was in office. Like it's just not what I was used to in California, and I'm born and raised in California. Um, but how was the process? Yeah, I knew that the easiest way to make the move would be if I had a job in hand, because I had considered, what if I just move, try to live off savings and apply. But I'm like, let me try first applying while here in California, because that way I won't have to deplete any sort of savings. And I was very lucky that I interviewed, that my skill set was marketable, and they actually offered me a job right away. So that was helpful because then I was able to start my new job in Phoenix, look for an apartment. The issue that we had was it wasn't just me. I had a partner, right? I had
Right.
my then boyfriend, he's my spouse now, but that was tough because he also did not have financial means to just kind of quit and live off savings. And I wasn't about to, I didn't have money to be able to pay for both our expenses. So he actually had to stay in San Diego that summer because he didn't have a job. He could not move to Phoenix until he found a job, and it took him a little longer. He's a recruiter. So yeah, eventually he found the job, and eventually he joined me in Phoenix. But yeah, that wasn't an easy leap, and even our relationship was strained because I'm like, I did not sign up for this long distance. And he's like, it's 6 hours, and I'll be there soon. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are not fun times.
So did the move, all right, so now you are working in your corporate career. You started your business, kind of your social media account on the side, sharing out personal finance, and realized you can't do both. There was a restriction, which is interesting because I
Yeah.
remember when I worked in corporate America, I guess I probably would have been under the same constraints because I worked for an insurance company in the financial, investment side of things. And I'm sure there would have been regulations. I just didn't ask I didn't ask permission. I figured I'd ask forgiveness over permission. And so I just kept it separate, right? So you probably did the right thing by probably asking in advance. But I know there are some people who there's like, it's a struggle between, do I share with my job what I'm doing, or do I just keep it under wraps until they find out, and then I'll deal with the consequences if there are any. Then I did have someone who's on the show, and they work full time, and they came on the show to share some content, some information, and they emailed me and said, well, my job found out about this, so you have to remove the episode. So like things like that do happen, right? For you, what was that like in terms of decision making? Were you just like, I'm just going to say up front what I'm doing because I don't want to get in trouble, or what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I would have definitely been caught eventually, just with the power of TikTok and how it reaches different pockets of the
Yeah.
internet. But yeah, at first, it was nice because nobody knew who I was when I had like a small following, and I
Yeah.
I call it like my Pharaoh era because I was just able to be unhinged and say whatever I wanted to say. Now I have to filter myself. I have sponsors, I have interested parties, so it's a very tamed down version of what it used to be in those early days. But Yeah, I mean, at the time, I knew that if I did podcast interviews and if somebody bumped into it, they may be like, "Oh, she's like now teaching this stuff," and I knew it wouldn't be a good look. And the thing with me, I remembered that I had to get approval because it was sort of like a quarterly reminder. We had to sign
Okay.
something electronically every quarter of like, remember to report your transactions, remember to report any paid outside work. So I knew I had to report it. And it was a sort of thing that like, it wouldn't be a slap on the wrist. I would have gotten fired. And I
Yeah.
just knew I didn't want to have that in my employment record.
Now you moved to Chicago. Was this before or after you quit to become a full time
After I quit.
entrepreneur? Okay.
Yeah,
And what prompted that move? Because that's kind of,
sure.
not as low a cost of living as Arizona.
Yeah.
And then how now? I would love to get into your entrepreneurship journey and stabilizing your income and what that's like.
I love that you asked me that question because nobody's brought that up, and it's such a good point that yeah, right. I left all my friends and community in San Diego to go to Phoenix, and that was very much a sacrifice to get away from
Yeah.
that. And also, the weather is not as fabulous as it is in San Diego. There was a lot that we sacrificed to get into a better financial foundation. But again, it was temporary. And then with time, once we had savings, once we had paid off debt, we were making more investing in our long term investing. We felt we're okay to be able to like live life a little more, because we were just doing the bare minimum, bare minimum needs in Phoenix to get ahead. And once we had that financial foundation, we're like, again, we can breathe a little and live life. And we said, well, where is that? Where are we going to move to be with like-minded community? We're child free. So we knew we wanted to be like in a bustling city, surrounded with other young professionals. So yeah, Chicago is not as cheap as Phoenix was. I would still argue it's cheaper than San Diego, but Chicago just has so much more to offer me as a resident here than what I got in value from San Diego. And I'm sorry, what was your question? You had a follow
Yeah,
up
no, well,
question.
so it's kind of it was a two-parter, and you moved to
Why
Chicago, but
Chicago, right? I think it was
yeah,
why
why
Chicago.
Chicago? And then because
Yes.
that was after you became a full-time entrepreneur.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And a big reason why we decided on Chicago was because I still was a little uncertain about my entrepreneurship journey. There was nothing guaranteed. And at the time, I thought, if I fail and if I don't make, like a livable income off working for myself, and I do need to go back to my corporate career, where is the best place to pick up where I left off? And I identified that a big financial hub like New York or San Francisco or Chicago would be a good place to do that. And there's just so many opportunities here for my old corporate career and for my new entrepreneur career to be able to do that. And that helped me feel more safe, as opposed to if I was, I don't know, and let's say I had moved to Bali. Like where would I
Yeah.
start working? So yeah, and I had friends here too, so that helped me feel welcome right away.
That's so smart and strategic. And I think thinking about your life and some of your decisions. I know not every decision. It's almost like you have plan A, but there's a plan B in case things don't work. So you kind of like it's almost like you're playing chess with your life and making seeing how things play out in advance. And okay, if this doesn't work, what's my fallback? And I love thinking about my life honestly in that way. I always say like it's important to strategize and think ahead, even if for the worst case. And if you're okay with the worst case, so let's just say your entrepreneurship didn't work out. Okay, I'm in a place in, a city in which my degree will help me land something because I have more chances to do something here. I just think it's really smart. And the other thing I like that you said I want to highlight is a temporary sacrifice. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, like when we think about doing things to get ahead with our finances, or we think it's like deprivation, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about what we get because of it, and we're not thinking that it's
Mm-hmm.
temporary. So I love that even though it was maybe a little hard, there was adjustment being in Arizona, it leapfrogged you forward, and like look what you were able to accomplish and do, and still get back to being in an area that you love, being around family and friends more often. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's something that I don't talk enough in my socials because I haven't figured out how to talk about it without it being braggy. But it really is good motivation for anybody that is in that like deprivation stage, paying off debt stage, that like it gets better. And I'm living that now. And I'm so thankful for that younger version of myself that put in that work because like now I live in a high rise in Chicago that I pay way too much money for. I know we pay too much in rent, but we're happy to do it because we know we can afford it. We have doormen that take care of us, and this is just something that that 20-year-old Geo that was running through all these financial hardships could have never even dreamt of.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So entrepreneurship now. Going from your steady paychecks, I know you had like a what we call FU fund. That's what I like leaned on
Yeah.
when I jumped into entrepreneurship because I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, before I was making these steady paychecks,
Yep.
now I'm gonna have to replace that or at least get to a point. What was it like now that you quit your full time in entrepreneurship? How did you adjust, if there was an adjustment at all, to getting, full time paychecks that you expected versus the sometimes just instability of entrepreneurship income?
Yeah, something that made it easier for me to take the leap was besides having 14 months of my savings, because again, I was squirreling money away for this round the world trip, I also had very low living expenses because I just had a very basic, frugal life. I think my expenses at the time were $2,000. And honestly, it might have been 1,800. It was pretty low for my portion of, I do have the privilege of splitting expenses with somebody else. I also would like to acknowledge that up until recently, I was pretty healthy, because I know
Mm.
that people, depending on what sort of chronic issues they have, medications, they may not be able to take that leap. So at the time, I was pretty healthy and I felt comfortable taking that leap. So, yeah, I think at the time, even though I had 14 months of my living expenses, I didn't want to go through the whole money trying to make
Yeah.
entrepreneurship happen. I told myself, I'm going to give myself 6 months to see how I do with this. I will clear out 6 months of my savings and see what happens. And about 3 months in, I'm like, ooh, there's opportunity here. Keep going. And I kept going. And now I'm happy to share. I was recently able to repay myself those 6 months and restart my little sabbatical fund for sometime in the future.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about that trip, which we can like kind of get to later about you kind of delaying it to pursue your entrepreneurial dreams, but what that looks like.
Yeah.
So you've also shared, you kind of alluded to it just now about like your health, right? Like health, there's so many parts of our lives that impact how we navigate our life and our finances. And so, yes, there's a privilege of being healthy without any medical
Yeah.
bills. There's, a privilege of having family support, right? And
Yeah.
somewhere to land if you need help, or a partner that has health care that then as an entrepreneur like myself, then don't need to search for healthcare. With that, you shared about your health journey recently. So can you share what that looked like and how that did impact your finances and your business itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Jamila is referring to a video I posted on my socials about how I had a hysterectomy in March of this year. So for anybody that doesn't know, a hysterectomy is a procedure where they remove your uterus. And the reason they removed my uterus was because I had pretty large uterine fibroids, which are very common in women. I think the statistic is that 80% of women over their lifetime will have uterine fibroids. And I know that they're very prevalent in the Black community. They run strong in my family. So I knew it was just a matter of time until these fibroids caught up to me. I just didn't think they would catch me at 33.
Mm.
Most of the women in my family got them in like their late 30s or early 40s. So I was a bit early. But that came out of nowhere because I didn't have any symptoms until I landed in the ER one day. And even the doctors were like dumbfounded that they're like, you really didn't have any symptoms or any pain? I'm like, nope, not until I came to the ER. So yeah, I went to the ER and they told me you need surgery in a month. And I said, hold on, I'm writing a book. I don't have time for surgery. And they said, you need to get this thing out because it's kind of concerning how large it went without you noticing. They were concerned that it could be cancerous.
Mm.
Thank God it wasn't. But yeah, that was very much, a curveball that was thrown at me. And I was dealing with a lot, mentally and emotionally and physically when I had my surgery because I actually had to get an abdominal incision. For a lot of hysterectomies, they can do smaller cuts, but with how big it was, they had to remove it entirely intact if it was
Mm.
cancerous. So I basically had a C-section with no baby. Instead of giving birth to a baby, I had my little uterine baby, uterine fibroid removed, and my
Listen,
uterus.
I've had three
Uh,
C-sections, so I know
oh
that's
no.
painful. That's very painful in the recovery. Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I have so much respect for women. And that was a big reason why I was child free because I didn't want to go through like the birthing process or
Mm.
a C-section and I still happened to me. But yeah, anybody here that's listening knows how tough of a recovery that is. And it was tough because, since I do work for myself, I no longer get paid time off it was a 6 to 8 week recovery. for me to feel all healed up. And on top of that, it was during what's a very profitable month for us financial educators. It was during Financial Literacy Month in April. So again, losing potential income, big income from that month, and then also not having any sort of supplemental income to cover me during my pay time off, during unpaid time off. So yeah, so like I said, it was tough, a tough spring for sure. Dealing with a lot mentally, emotionally, physically, but I'm so thankful that financially I did not have to worry because I had things in place to support me if something like this had happened. I had a health savings account to help pay for medical costs tax free. I have health insurance that was able to cover a lot of this. And then I also had my emergency fund to cover that unpaid time off. And I tallied up my expenses. I think I spent about $4,000. I
Mm-hmm.
spent 2 nights in the hospital, and it was a big surgery. I had follow up care, and even though it was a lot, I mean, who wants to pay $4,000 on medical expenses? It still didn't put me into debt. It didn't set me back financially. So I'm really thankful that I took ownership of my money journey and took care of myself, my future self, should things like this happen.
Yeah. You mentioned, the possible or the loss potentially that you had of income during that time. And, I think a lot of
Yeah.
people push off doing things for their health because it's never the right time, right? Like even now I'm thinking, oh gosh, I need to like make those doctor's appointments, but I'm in book launch mode and, I got one who has
Yeah.
time, but you need to make time because just like with finances, right? When you try to push things away or put it on the back burner, you're going to have to confront it sooner or later. And the more you push it off, like the possibly worst things can be when you do now, when you're ready to confront it or when it can't even be hidden anymore because the problem is there. So I just think
Yeah.
there's a lot of correlation there between people with like avoiding money and people avoiding what they need to do for their health. Because sometimes I hate to say it's too late. It's never too late in my opinion, but for health reasons, sometimes it can be if you put things off too long. Before you
Yeah.
take accountability or at least you look into it. So I do want to just say that I know that it's not the same for everyone. And there are people who have less help, stability, and things in place to help them take time off or to look and value their health. But that is so important because without being healthy, without understanding what you need to physically like move about in the world and be functioning, it can impact you so much more like down the road.
Yeah, health is wealth, so
Yeah.
none of the money in the matter, none of the money in the world matters if we don't have our health. So I hear you. I'm the same way, Jamila, that I'm really busy and I'm like, I don't have time for my eye exams. I don't have time for my dental appointment, but we got to make time because otherwise, like you said, stuff catches up to you.
Right, right. The other thing you mentioned that I want to talk about, because I know so many people deal with this, is boundaries with family and friends, financial boundaries, general boundaries, and you've been pretty open about you navigating your relationships. And so I'd love for you to explore or us to talk about what that looked like for you as you were starting to become more financially astute. How did that impact your personal
Mhm.
relationships? And then we could talk about boundaries.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, boundaries are hard. Especially if you come from like a very close knit family, like I do as a Latina. We value family, and that closeness to each other, knowing what's going on with the other person, knowing that you can depend on each other should you need to. But as I started learning about how money worked, I learned that in order for me to be my best self and to be able to support others in the future, I had to put my oxygen mask first, and I had to make sure I was okay. And I learned that I couldn't keep pouring out of this empty cup. So, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast episode, I grew up where it was very normal for money to be exchanged amongst family for whatever sort of emergencies. And I partook in that sort of culture a long time. But I decided that there had to be like a limit, right? And that's when boundaries came in. And that was really hard, because family expected me to do it all. If there was an unexpected medical expense, I was the one that was reached out to because, hey, you have good credit, right? That means you have a credit card with a $10,000 limit. Can we charge the surgery for so and so on this credit card? or hey, I need money because this broke down. Can you send me, a check? So the younger version of me would cave in and do all these things because I was I was instilled that that's how you show up for family. But as I learned more about money, I said, this isn't helping me get better with money, and it's actually leading me to like resenting my family because I feel that I'm being held back. So I finally mastered how to set those financial boundaries with family. I now only do it when I want to and when I have the financial means to. And that means that sometimes people aren't happy because they expect you to bow down as a daughter or as a niece or as a granddaughter, and open your checkbook. But I've had to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, anytime you set any sort of boundaries with family, it can be a little comfortable because they're like, hey, like you're not being a good daughter, or like you're not being a good family member. And you just kind of have to remind yourself that you're taking care of you so that you can be stronger later.
Do you have maybe any checks for yourself in place that you can share of like when you shared some already, like when you can and when you're comfortable doing it, but any other ways in which you evaluate helping like someone that is coming to you?
Sure.
Because yeah, I feel like I get the feeling, and I think another thing we can maybe discuss that's the opposite end of this is when we like I'm a hyper independent person, and so I don't ask people or a lot of people for things, and I get it on my own, and or there's a small group of people where it's just like, okay, I need this support, like, and it's not financially, it's just like really emotionally, right? With that said, if I get there's a hint, whether it's family or friends, but mostly family, if I get there's a hint of any dependency on me, like that it might be
Right.
coming down the road, or that you're being friendly because in the future you may want this, like, then I don't know if I overthink it or if I try to stop it before it happens. But I realize that some of my relationships I've stopped from growing with family members because I don't want to ever be put in that position. And I'm like, well, if I don't talk to you ever, or if I talk to you once a year, there's no way you're going to reach out and ask me for money because like we're not that close. And that's not
Right.
necessarily a good thing, right? Like that might be something I need to unpack in therapy. But it's
Yeah.
like I think there are a lot of people who feel that way. Like they close themselves off from maybe
Yeah.
family members or relationships in general because they don't want to feel, the obligation, or they don't want to have to say no. And so I think talking about this is important because you could be missing out on important relationships and meaningful relationships because a person may not ask you for anything. Or if they do, you have to be okay with saying no and not feeling bad. You can feel bad about it, but not knowing that you're not a bad person if you say no. So for you, how are you like in real time, or in like feeling or processing the feelings that come along with saying no to family? And yeah, anything else that you want to share on that?
Yeah, sure. And first, I want to piggyback on your point on kind of like holding back because you anticipate that ask. And I do want to say, like, it can feel beautiful to give and support others
Yeah.
when it's on your terms, but it's when your arms being twisted that it just doesn't feel good, and it eventually leads to resentment. And I have found myself too closing off in the sense where, before I would have shared with family, oh, I got this really cool project and they're paying me X amount and I'm really excited. And now I don't because I know they're going to be like, oh, she's got money. And, I have money, but I also have a life of my own. I have my own financial goals. I have business expenses, so all they see is like, oh, she's got money, so
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. Something that I keep in mind besides like, do I want to, and am I financially able to? I also will ask myself, is this like a life or death situation?
Mm.
So recently my grandfather was hospitalized, so for me, it's like, they need the help because is a medical issue and he's really bad. Another thing I'll keep in mind is, well, how are they doing with their own financial choices? And
Mm.
some people may see this as a sign of disrespect. They see it as like, no, like you show up for family, you don't question what they're doing. I disagree. I'm from a different just camp, and that's, I own that. But for example, I'll have people hit me up for money, people with vacation homes. So I don't even have one home and not definitely don't have a vacation home. And I've told these same family members, hey, maybe it's time to downsize and get rid of this vacation home that you don't even go to anymore because you don't have time. So yeah, so situations like that when I'm being tapped on the shoulder for financial support, but like you're not making smarter financial choices, even after I've given you some guidance, knowing that I know how this stuff works. If you're still blowing me off, I'm like, no, you need a budget. That's what you need.
Right, right, right. Well, I mean, those are valid, definitely things to ask for. And again, there's the, I think, between whether it's, your culture, no matter where you're from, or even just that age dynamic, where if you've grown in a place or in a family in which, the adults know, like,
Hmm.
this is how it works, and you're not supposed to question it. And if you do,
Yeah.
again, it's disrespectful or you're upsetting the course of things, that could be a shock to family structures or that are used to doing things one way. And I think that's really hard. It's harder than people sometimes talk about, and it impacts even how you make money. I would say that there's probably some people listening who can probably thrive more, but also stop themselves from thriving. So not even just like having connections with family, they stop, but thriving in their lives because they don't want to be
Oh
the one
no.
that people,
Yeah.
I've seen that. They don't want to be the one people depend on, or they don't want to be the
Right.
responsible one. I think that they don't want to be the survivor, the survivor's guilt in the other sense of the fashion that now I have to take care of it. So I rather not. I rather just like kind of be like everyone else.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, because I think at that point that person has to master how to be comfortable with those boundaries because it's an act of self-care, right? Like of prioritizing your needs, because it is beautiful to give to others, but you can't forget about yourself along the way.
Right. So where are you now with your personal finances and your financial journey? Do you feel like this is going to be a question that I know, like, do you feel like you have it figured out? Are you still learning? What are you doing for yourself to make sure that you can take that trip that you put off before?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I think it'll help to kind of paint a picture of, life when I had my W-2 job. So before when I had my stable corporate job, um, the goal was to build a lot of savings and to resign and then to go back to my corporate career. Because I actually surprisingly really liked what I did in my old job. A lot of people hate their corporate job. I actually really like my job and my boss and my coworkers and the company I was at. The other thing that was a big financial priority when I had my corporate job was early retirement. I was very much, I believe you're a part of the FIRE movement too,
Yes.
right, Jamila?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So my FIRE, yeah, I was going to retire at 45. Like I had everything projected and ready to go. And that was actually a big reason why I also was resistant to entrepreneurship because I'm like, hold on, I have like a clear path to retirement at 45. And now I'm taking a completely different road, which I don't know where it's going to lead. So, what's been surprising is that now that I work for myself, I don't feel that strong desire as much to like retire at 45 because I love what I
Yeah.
do. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do not want to be doing this until I'm 70. I definitely would like to retire before then. But I think now, if I get to do this kind of work, if I do it through 50, 55, I think I'd be okay, honestly. Or maybe part time, doing it part time. So that's changed. That's changed. I've eased off the gas pedal on heavy retirement contributions. I think at my highest, I was contributing 35% of my income. Right now, I think I'm doing 20%, 20% of my
Mm-hmm.
income into retirement. And then, do I feel that I'm like set? No, I feel that I'm secure. I feel that I'm secure in the sense that I have savings. I probably have 10-month emergency fund. I have an emergency fund for my business. We don't have any debt. We have our investing portfolio, right? Our retirement portfolio, which again, that'll probably at this current rate, it'll probably get me to retire. Yeah, I'd say 55, 60. I'd love to maybe purchase a rental property at some point. So that's something that we haven't made progress on. We just started. And then that other big goal of yeah, a possible sabbatical, I'm still figuring out what that's going to look like, whether I do take some time away from this entrepreneur job for a little bit and then maybe go back to it. Or, I would love to be able to keep doing this abroad. I have a lot of friends that have online businesses abroad and to go to Spain for a year or Italy for a year and have this lifestyle. So we'll see. We'll see where life takes me.
Yeah, well, I think that's the beauty of the journey too. What you explained is that with more stability and the way that you earn money, so there's a flexibility in the way that you earn money now. Like it's not tied to being at a desk or for a
Yeah.
boss. Like you are your own boss, which is not always a good
Yeah.
thing, but it's helpful because then you can then decide, like, if you want, like you just said, like you eased up on investing because you enjoy your lifestyle now. You enjoy the balance of work and fun. And I think a lot of people, what pushes them to the fire movement, what pushed me to it, is because the balance is not there. It's a lot of
Yeah,
work, not a lot of fun. You're not enjoying the time and energy freedom that you want. And so, but as you start the journey, as you get closer to that, whether you find something that you love, but then you're also making enough money to satisfy your lifestyle needs and financial goals, you can start
right.
like thinking about, okay, do I necessarily want to put all my money and wait? Because I think investing aggressively and this early retirement goal that you had, or that I once had, and I still kind of have it, I'm still going to achieve it, still puts off living your life a bit, right? Just like if someone's waiting until they're 65
Totally.
to quit their job, like you said, like not everyone like makes it. Life is
Makes
short,
it. Yeah.
right? And so I think it's so important that you learn to live life now and find that sweet point of like
Hmm.
loving what you do, or at least enjoying it where you don't hate it, and then making money and making enough money to save and invest for the future, but then also provide for your lifestyle needs.
Yeah, and it's going to look different for everybody because we all
Yeah.
have different values, different goals. But yeah, finding your own sweet spot is what's going to help you.
So Gigi, please tell us. I know you're working on a book. It's going to come out in January. I want to hear more about it. And then like what are you going to be what are you doing where people can find out more about you?
You're so sweet. Thanks, Jamila. Yes, so you can learn more about me on my website, thefirstgenmentor.com. All my socials are tagged there. I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And if you go to my book is called Cultura Cash. So if you go to culturaandcash.com, you can sign up for a waitlist to be notified when the book launches in January. And I would like to give a shout out to Jamila, who gave me an advance praise for the book and is supporting the launch. So thank you so much, Jamila.
Yes, I cannot wait to get my hands on the physical copy. You sent me the PDF already and it's great. And so I'm really just wishing you the best. And I mean, you'll be hearing a lot more from Gigi, I think. So keep a lookout for her, and we'll tag all her socials and what she mentioned, the book, all that in the show notes. So thank you again, Gigi.
Yeah, thank you again for having me on. I told you that when I went to my first FinCon in 2021, you were one of the main stage speakers and you were so inspiring to me that was just getting started. And I love seeing you shine. I'm so excited for your upcoming book. And thank you for inviting me into your space.